In this video, we'll be installing the inner tie rod end on this Ford F-150. So we're going to remove our inner tie rod from our driver's side, from our passenger side here. We have a cotter pin that we're going to remove. And anytime you remove a cotter pin, make sure you replace it with a new one. And then we can remove our castle nut, which is going to be a 7/8. Now your castle nut here, you can leave it a few threads on because we're going to need to push out our driver's side inner tie rod. If you take that castle nut all the way out and you pop this out, it may swing down. So we'll leave that in there for safety. We'll use a pry bar, see if we can get that inner tie rod to pop free. If that doesn't work, sometimes you can come up top here on that castle nut and hit it with a hammer. Okay, so now we can remove our castle nut and we can lower down our inner tie rod. And we're going to put our castle nut right back on so we don't lose it. So next, we follow this up a little bit more. We have one more ball joint here on our inner tie rod. We're going to remove that cotter pin. And the same applies here. Remember to replace this cotter pin and not to reuse the old. Okay, so now we have access to our castle nut. Castle nut's going to be a 21 millimeter. We're going to thread that backwards 90% of the way, but still leave it on. We're going to leave it right about there. We still need to separate it here. Grab a hammer and see if we can get it to separate by hitting right here. If not, we'll have to come in here with a pickle fork. We are replacing this, so it is okay if we do damage here. If you're not replacing this, you want to avoid the pickle fork at all costs. They usually do damage to the boot. Once you've got your ball joint to separate here, we can move down. So now our adjustment sleeve, the back bolt, or the back nut, is going to be a 17 millimeter. The front, we're going to use a 9/16. And we just need to loosen up the front here so we can spin out our inner tie rod. Now from here, we can take out our castle nut at the other side and drop down our inner tie rod here. So now what you want to do is spin out your inner tie rod, and you want to count the amount of turns, full rotations, you spin your inner tie rod out. When we put the new one back in, you're going to tighten it up or spin it in to the same amount of rotations. So go ahead and count as you spin out your tie rod. So right through here, we're going to use one of our pry bars and spin our tie rod out. So our new tie rod end comes with a piece that will interfere with this here. So we need to remove this piece here, which is basically the pinch on our adjustment sleeve. All right, so we're going to take our inner tie rod. We've put our adjustment sleeve bolt here onto our inner tie rod, slipped it all the way in. Put just a quick coat of anti-seize on the inside there, and now we're going to turn in our inside tie rod to the count that we had when we removed it. All right, so now that you have it spun in, the right amount of counts for you, we're going to take the inside of that tie rod end and sit it up into our steering box and put our castle nut on. We're just going to get this tight by hand, and then from here we'll go backwards a little bit and we'll put in our inner tie rod from our driver's side. Now once you've gotten to this point, what you want to do is just give it a quick look and make sure your rotors or your tires are parallel and actually facing straight and they're not crooked left or right. You're still going to need a professional alignment, but it'll be a good start just to make sure that your counts were right and everything is straight and in line. If everything's good, we'll move down our inside tie rod and put our clamp back on our sleeve. We're going to spin this around. Put our bolt back through. We'll tighten this up and then we'll torque it down. We'll torque this down to 35 foot-pounds. Okay, we're going to torque our 2 castle nuts down to 55 foot-pounds. We can pass our cotter pin through and bend it back to lock it in place. So right here we can't get our cotter pin through, so we'll continue to tighten that down until the notch with the castle nut aligns with the hole. Perfect. And we'll pass this cotter pin through as well and bend it back. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.